Good evening. We are back to the study of the Spirit's book. We are on chapter 1 of book 4, Earthly Joys and Sorrows. And we started last week the item Distaste for Life, Suicide, which is a very complex subject. So just before we go back to the questions, just a reminder of what we talked about last week. We are talking here about voluntary suicide. Suicide committed with the intention of killing oneself. We're not talking about involuntary suicide, which may be a consequence of our lifestyle, of risks we take, and things like that. Within voluntary suicide, we also divided between those that are committed by people that are fully aware of what they are doing and people that are suffering from mental disturbances or spiritual obsessions and serious influences. Of course, and we are going to repeat here, the consequence of a suicide is different for each person. The same way that consequences for each case of reincarnation and each case of discarnation is completely different from every other person, like fingerprints, right? Suicide also, the consequences of suicide will vary according to our understanding and awareness of what we are doing. We talked about people that commit suicide without really knowing what they are doing, and they find themselves back in the spiritual world, and they are more open to receive assistance. Everyone is able to receive assistance when they are back in the spiritual world, but not everyone is open to receive assistance. So someone that commits suicide thinking that with that they are finishing their existence completely because there is nothing after the death of the physical body. Of course, when they don't die, because we never die, our physical body dies, they have a very difficult time accepting and understanding that life continues. They think that they are still alive, and they get very confused. I mentioned the beginning of the book Memoirs of a Suicide, when Camilo Castelo Branco describes his experience after he committed suicide. He committed suicide because he got blind, and he was a writer, and at his time said a writer that is blind has no purpose, has no reason to live, so he killed himself, and he spent a long time to try to until he fully understood and asked for help and received the help. So he wandered throughout cemetery, throughout his house, and faced all these challenges of not fully understanding that his physical body had died, because, of course, if you think that the physical body is everything and you are not dead, your logical conclusion is that your physical body didn't die. And he had trouble seeing his physical body in the cemetery, not understanding. He was very confused. So even seeing his physical body in the cemetery wouldn't convince him that he was dead. He was still thinking that something strange was happening, and he didn't understand what. So someone that goes back to the spiritual world, but have a belief in life after death, and is not aware of the act they committed because of lack of awareness, understanding, or something mental related, will be much it will be much easier for them to receive assistance back in the spiritual world. Also in the cases of, for instance, euthanasia, right? People that has to be given the injection, many of them are aware of the possibility of life, of the continuation of life. But what they want is to end their physical life because they are suffering, because they have a series of problems. So the assistance for them also is proportional to the awareness, the time they had to live still, and things like that. Because normally you also, when you are very sick, your vital energy is pretty much reduced a lot. So the consequences of the vital fluid that you still have, the case of someone young that commits suicide, is different from someone very old. So it's just to give an overall idea of the differences of the consequences of suicide, because again, in Spiritism is very easy, people learning that suicide is a crime that you commit against oneself, and yes, it is, but it has serious punishment, which is the same for everyone, and it's not. The consequences are according to their awareness. Just a reminder, we mentioned last week, it's important to repeat that every person that commits suicide on average affects 6 people that are close to them in family, friends, or partners, and this sort of thing. So it is, when you know what you are doing, it is a selfish, very selfish act. But again, each case is a case. Okay, so we stopped on 947, and we're going to start on 948. Philip.
Is suicide as disgraceful when committed to escape the shame of having done wrong as when it is prompted by despair? Suicide does not erase a fault and is actually a second fault in addition to the first. People who have the courage to do wrong should have the courage to bear the consequences of their actions. God is our judge, and sometimes the circumstances may be a factor in diminishing the atonement.
So here, the question that Kardec asked the spirits is someone committing suicide because they have done wrong to the family or to someone else, and because of shame, they kill themselves. This is very common, right? We hear this a lot. People that commit suicide at the time of Kardec, people that caused their family to lose the fortune, or was caught in a scandal that was embarrassing for them, for their families, they would resort to suicide. And what the spirits are telling us here is that they are actually committing a second fault in addition to the first. So they already made the mistake of whatever they did wrong. And to commit suicide on top of that is to aggravate the mistake they made. And that people should have the courage to face the consequences of their actions. And that's what we are here to learn. We are imperfect spirits. We are going to make mistakes, and to learn from our mistakes, not to repeat them, is the challenge that we have here coming to an incarnation on Earth. Now, the Spirit tells us God is our judge, and again, this is the natural law. So we have the natural law, God's law imprinted in our conscience. So our judge is our conscience according to the natural laws. And then the Spirit tells us sometimes the circumstances may be a factor in diminishing the atonement, which is what we discussed. And when you were reading this, I was thinking about the kamikazes in Japan, right? They commit suicide because they think is an act of honor, right? To kill oneself in the name of the country. It is a mistake, yes, it is. But the consequences are different from someone that is committing the act selfishly. You see, the act of committing a kamikaze, it's not a selfish act. according to their view, because they are doing it in the name of the country. We're not saying it's right, it's not. But the other way, the other thing that they kill themselves with the sword, called the harakiri, which is another way of killing oneself, right? These are not selfish acts. These are acts following a tradition, an honor. It's wrong. It is a suicide, but the mitigation, the facts there is the circumstances that are factoring diminishing the atonement, because these spirits, they wake up in the spiritual world. They may be surprised that they'll continue to live, but they don't think they're guilty, right? They go with a theoretically clean conscience back to the spiritual world, because they believe they are doing something right. There are consequences, yes, there are serious consequences. Now, you can ask about suicide bombers, right? This is different, because you are causing damage to others, you are killing others, you are causing destruction with your act. So it is an evil act that has consequences. Of course, you are doing it out of a fanaticism, out of something that you believe religiously. So it is also taken into consideration, yes, but it's more serious consequences that someone that commits suicide in a honor killing, like in the culture in Japan, right? I'm just giving you some examples and ideas for us to reflect that each case is a case and consequences are different. Okay.
John, hi, Carol here. Hi. Also, the Buddhist monks emulated or torched themselves, brought themselves to burn in front of the public to show their disdain for war. They were probably supported by their shrine or their fellow countrymen. But again, that would be a difficult consequence even for the monks who have killed themselves. Would that be correct?
Yes, because their motives for them are noble. But, we all can make a lot of mistakes for noble purposes, right? And there are consequences for that. Every time we saw in the beginning, but we have no right to take our own lives. That's what the Spirit tells us. So if we take our own lives, there is consequence for that. The type of consequence is what we are discussing. So of course, their consequence for them is going to be different from someone that kills oneself out of selfish or just to avoid facing prison or things like that, right? But again, there is always consequences. So you kill yourself in name of peace. You call the attention of a limited number of people for a limited amount of time. That it does not have a lasting effect, right? So what is the purpose of this act? This is what we have to reflect also, right?
The last week we spoke about a big word, intention, right? And we can add another word here, which is knowledge. The more you know, the more responsible you are. So the question, what will the individuals want? What do they know about the spiritual preservation of life? What do they learn in that temple? Something that is comparable to what we understand as what happens after that here, but they have a completely different understanding of that preservation of life. So it starts with one, the intention, and the intention really is the individual himself, with his own conscience, and the knowledge, not only the things that you know, but also the question, if you do not know, have you been exposed to it and ignored, or you have never been exposed to it? But there are many things to take in consideration, and that's why, there is no judgment, there's no way to try to figure out the consequences of someone's act. But there's two words that I think are very important for us to think about. One is the intention, and that individual knows the intention, most often only that person knows, and knowledge. The more you know, the more responsible you are.
Okay. Okay, 949.
Is suicide excusable when committed to avoid bringing disgrace to one's children or family? People who act under this belief do no good, but they think they do, and God takes their intention into consideration. Intention lessens the fault, but it is a fault nevertheless. When you have eliminated your social prejudices and injustices, you will have no more suicides. People who take their own lives to escape the shame of a bad action prove that they attach more value to the opinion of other people than they do to that of God. They return to the spirit world burdened by their wrongdoings. As a result, they deprive themselves of the atonement planned for the current life. God is not as inexorable as human beings are. God pardons those who sincerely repent and takes into account their efforts to remedy all our wrongs. But suicide resolves nothing.
Yeah, it's more of what we discussed here, right? When you commit suicide to avoid bringing disgrace to one's children or family, or to escape from the embarrassment that you are going to cause to your family. You don't want to face the consequence. You don't want to go to prison. You don't want to be exposed publicly. Again, it's the word that here they bring the word that Elmo just mentioned, intention. Lessens the fault, but it is a fault nevertheless. That when we have these situations, what we have is that people running away from their problems. And I heard that the phrase that is repeated a lot, right? Suicide is
Painless?
No, it's a permanent solution for a temporary problem in most of the cases, right? And so you are doing something that is permanent and in your own life, and the problem you're going to carry back to the spiritual world. But the problem, all our problems are temporary. They will be solved eventually. Even the problems that are part that we carry through the physical life, eventually they will end. We are eternal spirits, so eventually all our problems will disappear. When we reach perfection, we won't have any problems. Now, when we are killing ourselves because of this, we are adding, increasing a problem, right? We are potentially. Yeah, exponentially, yes, because the consequences are serious, right? I mentioned the book Memoirs of a Suicide, which is a very difficult book to read for those that lost loved ones to suicide, and can scare a lot of people. But it is a very, very good book that explains the process, explains what happens, explains the different situations faced by these 5 individuals that become a group there in the spiritual colony that they are being treated, the spiritist institution that is governed by the Mother of Jesus, right? She is the one that is responsible for all suicides, and it is Again, it looks that the problem is getting worse nowadays, right? We hear more about suicide, and if we look at the Spiritist literature, we're going to find in the Spiritist Review an article, or in the Genesis, I'm not sure, that times of transformation of the world, moving to a world of regeneration, the number of suicides was going to increase, especially amongst children and youth, because these are spirits coming to have a last opportunity to continue living on Earth, and they are on the planet Earth before, if they cannot stay with us, they are going to go to a different, to a less evolved planet. And so all these spirits that spend a very long time in the spiritual world, not having the chance or not wanting to reincarnate, are reincarnating and having to face the challenges of the physical life, and many of them are not able to face the challenge and end up committing suicide. Okay.
950.
950.
What should we think of people who kill themselves hoping to reach a happier state of existence sooner? What foolish logic. If a person does good works, he or she is much more certain of reaching that happiness. Suicide delays the entrance into a better world. Those who have committed this act eventually ask to come back to earth to complete the life they have mistakenly cut short. A fault, no matter what it may be, can never open the door to the sanctuary of the good.
Yeah, this is a misguided logic, right? Because people hear that our life is, our true life is there in the spiritual world. That when we go back to the spiritual world, we'll be happy. Remember, this was the beginning of information about the spiritual world in 1857, 1860. There was not much besides what Kardec brought from the spirits. The Spiritist Review had a couple of years on the second edition of the Spirit's book that had 1,019 questions, right? So many people hearing that we are going to find happiness when we are back in the spiritual world, and even in the church, right, that used to teach that we are going to go, if we behave, we're going to heaven. These people may think that by killing themselves, they are going to heaven sooner, right? Or they are going to a better life sooner. And the Spirit tells us it's a foolish logic, right? Because if you commit suicide, you are committing a crime against yourself, and you will delay the entrance into a better world. So it will be a horrible mistake. But again, the intention was to find a better situation for themselves, right? So the consequences are serious. They have to come back and complete the life they mistakenly cut short, but they are more prepared to receive help because they believe they are going to a better place. When they find themselves in not a better place, in a more difficult place, what they are going to have is repentance, but an understanding that they returned to the spiritual world. It's just that they didn't end up in the place they thought they would. And then, we can read some cases of suicide in heaven and hell, spirits that committed suicide that came to tell their story, and we'll see how difficult is this situation they face when they return to the spiritual world. Okay.
951. Is the sacrifice of one's life admirable when it is made to save the lives of others or to be useful to them? When incurred for such an end, it is inspirational. However, such a voluntary sacrifice of life is not suicide. God disapproves of useless sacrifices. And when pride tarnishes the intention as well, a sacrifice is only admirable when disinterested. If accomplished with a selfish end in mind, its value decreases before God. Every sacrifice at the cost of our own happiness made for the sake of others is extremely commendable before God because it fulfills the law of charity. Life is a human being's most valuable earthly possession. Those who renounce it for the good of fellow beings rather than committing a crime are making the ultimate sacrifice. However, before making this sacrifice, they should consider whether their life could be more useful than their death.
Okay, that's a very interesting point we touched last week. We mentioned the case of the teacher that jumped in front of the children to protect them when there was a serial killer that and died to save children. Someone that jumps in front of a vehicle to save a child, to save someone else. Again, it's not suicide because again, go back to what Elmo said, intention, right? Your intention is the most noble intention, which is to save lives. And if in the process of saving lives you lose yours, that's not suicide, right? It's very clear that it's not suicide. If a sacrifice, disinterested sacrifice, right? I was when you were reading this, I was remembering the case of the last incarnation of Joanna de Angelis, right? When she was the Mother Superior of an institution in Salvador, Bahia, in the city of Divaldo, in the beginning of the 19th century. And there was a rebellion in the city, and the Portuguese tried to take over the convent, and she put herself in front of the invaders to protect the nuns in the convent, and they killed her. So is this a suicide? Of course not, right? She was trying to protect the convent, trying to protect the nuns. So she sacrificed herself to save others. So again, it's very simple and very direct. Whenever you are doing out of charity, you're sacrificing yourself to help others, it's not a suicide. Okay?
$9.52.
Yes.
Are people who fall victim to excessive indulgence in passions that they know will hasten their death, but which they are uncontrollably addicted to, committing suicide. This is moral suicide. Do you not see that in this case, such persons are even guiltier? They are guilty of lacking resolve of the sin of depravity and of the neglecting God. Would this person be more or less guilty than the person who commits suicide out of despair? Such individuals are guiltier because they had time to reflect on the suicidal nature of the course they were pursuing. When a person commits suicide impulsively, sometimes a degree of confusion or disorientation is quite similar to madness. The former is punished much more severely than the latter, as the penalties for a crime are always proportionate to the consciousness and intention of the wrong committed.
Okay. Here we enter in the nuances of committing suicide, right? Because here the question is really an involuntary suicide, right? Someone that falls victim of their inferior passions, maybe an addiction, maybe some of the other passions that hasten the death, the Spirit tells us this is moral suicide, right? Because they are guilty of lacking willingness to fight against their passions. And then the Spirit compares this person against someone that commits suicide out of despair, out of impulsively, with a degree of confusion or disorientation that can be compared to madness, right? And again, go back to intention, right? What Elma said, right? Those that commit suicide out of mental imbalance, not exactly know what they are doing, they will have less responsibility than someone that abused their physical body until they die. But again, you go back to intention. Those, let's say, someone that is smokes their whole life. We know that smoking kills. Smoking causes a lot of problems. The person have trouble quitting smoke, cannot quit smoking, and we know that how difficult it may be to quit smoking, and they end up dying as a consequence of the smoking, right? They will carry the consequences in their physical, in their very spirit, and likely in their future physical body. But it is an involuntary suicide. It is not a voluntary suicide. Someone that kills themselves out of madness, you may even call also, involuntary is not the exact word, but it's not clearly voluntary, right? It's an awareness of what they are doing, lack of understanding of what they are doing. And I mentioned last week someone that I know that tried to commit suicide twice, and every time after cutting the wrists, called for help. So they don't know what they're doing, and in the moment they realize what they did, they call for help. Right? There is a spiritual component of spiritual influence that is very serious in this case. So crime is always proportional to the consciousness and intention of the wrong committed. That's the key words there in all cases of voluntary or involuntary suicide. Okay.
And with this specific question, knowledge is very big over here. Because the question, and that gets specifically, are people who fall victim of excess indulgence and passions that they know will hasten their death. That is a much severe case for those individuals. Here, the knowledge is very important. Because if it's possible, and again, it's possible part of the world, that sometimes there's a lot of cigarette smoke is that bad. But if you're living on Occidental Monaco, you can't blame even the cigarette smoke to be wrong. There is no way that you can blame the ignorance. So if you know that they don't choose to smoke, you're much more responsible somewhere, I don't know, somewhere in the world that have no contact with civilization and continue to smoke. Maybe that it's school, that is not a problem. It is still somewhat involuntary suicide because it's passive on that, but does not have the knowledge.
And again, it takes in consideration your life conditions, right? The country, if you talk about smoking, the country that has the highest number of smokers in proportion to inhabitants is China, right? And the life conditions of some of these people that are heavy smokers may be so difficult, so oppressive that it's their way out of their escape valve for the oppression. So everything is taken into consideration. So okay.
953. When people face an unavoidable and terrifying death, are they guilty for abridging their sufferings by a voluntary death? It is always wrong not to wait for the end appointed by God. Besides, how can people tell whether the end of their life has really come, or whether some unexpected help may reach them at what they believe to be their last breath? We admit that in ordinary circumstances, suicide is reprehensible. But what about the times when death is unavoidable and life can be abbreviated for only a few moments? It always means a lack of resignation and submissiveness to the will of the Creator. In this case, what are the consequences of this action? Atonement proportioned to the gravity of the mistake, according to the circumstances under which it was committed, as always.
Okay, so here are some interesting questions, right? Someone that is facing an unavoidable and terrifying death. Let's say you fall under the capture of kidnappers, and they are torturing you for information, and to try to avoid suffering even more, you find an opportunity and kill yourself. What's your responsibility, right? Again, the consequences are it is a suicide, but of course the consequences are different because you are committing a suicide out of desperation. It's not our conscious decision. It's more out of a desperation and desire to escape more suffering, more pain, right? But again, it has consequences like everything, but according to the circumstances. But and that is the question. A is really talking about euthanasia, right? At the time of Kardec, didn't exist under those terms, but nowadays it's becoming more and more widespread, right? I was reading an article about Canada today, how many cases they had last year. I don't know the number, but it's a very large number of cases. And what the Spirit tells us is lack of resignation and lack of submission to the will of the Creator. And the consequences will be proportional to the gravity of the mistake. Again, here we can extend into the discussion in the sense of someone that chooses to die because they are suffering for an incurable disease, and then they travel to one of these places that you can commit suicide, and you commit suicide, you are responsible, more responsible than someone that is, in a bad, already very sick, suffering in pain, and then you ask for someone else in the hospital to end your suffering, right? Each case is a case. Each situation is a different situation. Normally, what the Spirit tells us is that many cases when let's say, you had 2 months to live and you commit euthanasia, you let's say own 2 months to yourself, and then you may come into an incarnation that you are going to live 2 months, or you are going to go through a miscarriage of your mother is going through a miscarriage. It could be several different consequences for this time that you could have continued here. But again, the consequences are not the same as someone that is 25 years old and commits suicide because of lost love or something, lost a job or something like that, right? You are sick, you are afraid of the consequences of your disease, and you choose to commit suicide because of being afraid of what's going to happen to you. again, there are consequences. You are going to go back to the spiritual world. You'll continue to suffer, and most likely what you've been suffering here, because you have to continue having the experience, and you are going to add the serious consequences of making the choice of ending your own life. But again, it's understandable when someone is in a desperate situation. There are consequences, but each case is a case. And there are some people that will face less serious consequences than others with the same type of decision according to their own situations.
$9.54.
Yeah.
Is there any guilt in an imprudent action that has unnecessarily caused loss of life? There is no guilt where there is no positive intention or consciousness of doing harm.
Yeah, we spoke last week about this. I even mentioned a case of a girl in Brazil that was going to do jumping rope, and they didn't attach the rope properly, and she jumped and fell and died. And someone asked if it was suicide, and clearly it's not, because she had no intention. There is no positive intention of consciousness of doing harm to oneself. So even you have a consequence because you chose to do something risky. Everything has consequences, but it is not suicide. It's the same way, you decide to drive your car 120 miles per hour, you have an accident and die. Is it suicide? No, it's imprudence, and you have to face the consequences of the decision to drive fast, but it is not suicide because you didn't want to kill yourself.
I was thinking about the drunk drivers. So they are not suicide.
They are not suicide, but they are responsible for.
Okay.
Because they made two wrong choices: to drink and to drive. So they have serious consequences, which may be even more serious than someone that dies out of suicide when you don't know what to do because of a mental problem, right? Because when you drink and you drive, you are not committing suicide, but you are harming yourself with two serious.
Depends on how drunk the person is. The person is not kind of conscious enough to make a decision.
The moment you decide drinking, you are making.
Yeah.
And I think you can, even when you are driving, what the problem is, that people think that they can drive. They think that they are okay, and they are not. Because someone that is completely drunk, they cannot even go to the car.
Yeah.
So they're not going to drive. But the problem is when you are not drunk enough to be impaired, completely impaired, and then you decide to drive. These are two serious actions, and it's probably the consequences are more difficult than someone that committed suicide out of madness, right? Which is the word they used here, right?
John, hi, John again. Carol here. What about the case of the subway surfers, the guys or women who go on top of the subways and jump train to train? I mean, I would imagine it's just ill-conceived, but yet, there's a risk. I mean, there is risk.
It's not a suicide.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because they don't want to kill themselves. It's imprudence, yeah, imprudence. And there are serious consequences. Yes, it's someone, it's like someone driving 120 miles per hour and having an accident and dying. It's the same thing, right? You are risking your life, but you are not trying to commit suicide. So When you talk about suicide, this is not suicide because there's no intention to kill oneself.
And also, they double down because someone may have encouraged them to do the action or have placed a bet that they could do it. So I don't know. It's kind of a very quirky situation.
Yes, again, those that made the bet or made the dare, they are also, see, if the person dies, they are responsible for the death of that person. They will face the consequence of their acts. But specifically talking about suicide, it is not a suicide because there's no intention. There are serious consequences, yes, but it's not a suicide.
Also, the person has
Thank you.
not to do.
Yeah, the person has a free will not to take the dare, right? So if the person takes the dare and dies, the person is going to be responsible. They are going to face serious consequences, but it is not a suicide.
I've something I like to interject. Suicide is a very, very difficult topic. You know that?
Yes, I know.
It's a very, very difficult topic. Now, how do we contrast suicide with the basic instinct of self-preservation? Because when you are in suicide, you are denying that instinct and
Yes.
you are rejecting that instinct. So the mere fact that you are rejecting that instinct by itself, I find it kind of not, the person may not be, uh, basically, the person is not sane. Basically, that's my point. Something is off because you are going against that innate preservation. How do you
Yes.
how do you how do you how do you
It's a
put
natural
those yeah, how do you put those two apparently contradicted issues together?
Yeah, but when you reflect, Paco, we all come with the instinct of a superior being God, right?
Oh yes,
And those that become atheists or agnostics make a conscious decision of rejecting the instinct that they have in their conscience. So it's the same thing, right? We come with the instinct of self-preservation, but some of us decide to go against the instinct and commit suicide. It's not natural. It's against the natural law. It's not natural. Goes against our instinct of surviving. There is a natural instinct that we have.
that's my point. If it's not natural, the person who even contemplates that is not balanced.
Yes, you can discuss the reasons here, right? We talk about selfishness, we talk about mental imbalance, we talk about shame. There are reasons that they make people commit suicide, and they are all reasons that go against the natural law and go against the teachings of Jesus, of us trying to progress, an opportunity that we are having here to incarnate. All of these are taken into account. Now, one thing here that we didn't mention is spirits that commit suicide most likely have committed suicide in other lives. So they have to come and face again the opportunity of resist the temptation and overcome this temptation.
Yeah, but let's not miss the point. Let's not miss the point that our journey in life is a journey of learning, learning, and learning lessons.
Yes.
So it is the way I see it. Even if you commit suicide, and it may be wrong, I'm not here to judge. It's still a lesson.
Yes.
It
And
is
again,
still a lesson. It's subsequently in the many journeys that the person will have. Definitely, it's a lesson to be learned. It's like I do believe that all experiences are lessons that God would have me learn.
everything is a lesson. Even when
Yes.
we're not
Yeah.
making any effort
Exactly.
to progress, we are learning that not making any effort is a waste of time and of an opportunity. So are we going to learn from the suicide? There are serious consequences, and we
Yeah.
should learn from it. But the fact that it's a lesson doesn't mean that it's something that it goes in line with God's law. It's against God's law, right?
It has to be a condone or approved, that I understand. But I want to take away a little bit of the guilt and the shame away from it, because to me, the God is all understanding and all compassionate and all supportive.
Absolutely.
You
God gives
understand?
us
So
endless
even if you fall down and you get up, you fall down, the hand will always be there.
There is no punishment from God.
Yeah,
Always.
as we learn here, this is just a matter of a system that if you don't do this, then you're going to pay your consequences.
We are the ones that punish ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the system is perfectly designed.
Yeah.
That's my point. The system is perfectly designed by the Creator. I
Yeah.
believe that. I do believe that. And then we are the ones that fail in our progress.
Exactly that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, we'll do one more.
955. In some countries, women voluntarily burn themselves with the body of their husbands. Are they guilty of suicide and punished for the crime? They obey the dictates of prejudice and are often the victims of force rather than their own free will. They believe that they are carrying out a duty, and such an act does not constitute suicide. Their excuse is in the moral bankruptcy and ignorance of the majority of them. All such barbaric and stupid customs will disappear with the development of civilization.
So in this case, that nowadays I don't remember hearing reading about this still being the custom anywhere, but there was this customs that the husband would die, the woman would have to kill herself because she couldn't continue living. She had to be buried together with the husband at the time of comeback. In this case, the spirit says it's not a suicide. The responsible is the society, the ignorance of the majority of the society that they live, and they already said here, all such barbaric and stupid customs will disappear with the development of civilization. And we know that is true because we barely hear of this. I know that in Afghanistan, women have very little rights and they struggle a lot. They cannot work, they cannot go to college, but they cannot drive. Well, Saudi Arabia, they couldn't drive until 10 years ago, right? But again, you see that is evolving. They are allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia now. In Afghanistan, they are allowing women to do some things here. So the ones responsible are not the ones that in this case, the woman that commits suicide, she's not responsible. She's being forced by society to do so, right? It's like she's being pushed from a ledge. She didn't kill herself. She's being pushed from a ledge to die because that's the society. So society is responsible, not her, because probably most of the cases she did not want to kill herself.
But she probably believes what society taught her. You understand? And she probably is doing it willingly and with probably joy. I don't know, because I don't know about that specifically. But sometimes tradition and culture is so ingrained, Joel, that people go through motions robotically.
No, yeah, you're right. And then it goes the intention and knowledge, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's key. The intention.
Yeah,
Was she?
because if
Was
she
she?
feels that she has to follow the cause, then she does it knowing that that's what she should be doing, that should be more responsible than being forced to kill herself because of customs. And for, you know, so again, each case is a case. We
That I agree too. Yeah,
cannot generalize here. We talk about suicide that creates
I-
responsibilities, but consequences are always in according to each case. We cannot consider all cases being the same. Okay. All right. We're going to stop here. We have a couple of questions left in this chapter. We studied already for 2 weeks, but we still have 2 questions more. And the last one is what happens to the spirit in the spiritual world. And so it's an interesting topic. And the one next to last is those that are unable to bear the loss of loved ones and kill themselves in hope of rejoining them. There is a case there in heaven and hell of a woman that killed no, it's not the mother. The mother with son. Yeah, the mother that kills to reunite with the son, and of course did not. And they communicate. The son communicates, and it's a very interesting. But there's a lot to talk there, so we're going to leave it for next week. Okay, so. This Saturday, we don't have a talk for the United States Spiritist Federation talk because it's 4th of July. But we have our study on Sunday of the book Action and Reaction. We are on chapter 19, which is the next to last chapter. And we are open, of course, on Monday here. It's not a holiday, so we'll be here on Monday. Okay. Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Yes, certainly, John. And thank you very much for hosting. Thank you, Elmo, as well. Philip, thank you for reading for us this evening and everyone who is here participating. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks to be together as brothers and sisters for our studies of the Spirit's book, Book 4, Chapter 1, Distaste for Life/Suicide. Suicide does not erase the fault or wrong that was committed and aggravates the consequences according to the natural laws. What is the actual intention of a suicide, and what is their knowledge regarding the responsibility of actions taken? Suicide delays happiness and the entrance into a better world. It is a mistake. To save another's life is inspirational and is not considered a suicide. Uncontrolled addictions and indulgences can be a moral suicide because there is an ongoing conscious awareness of the actions. We have the natural instinct of self-preservation, and the natural laws exist within. There are lessons and opportunities within God's laws for everyone. We give thanks to our spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us this evening. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us, and for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, our counselors, our mediums, our workers, and all of our participants. We pray for inner peace, and especially now for world peace, and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, our friends, loved ones, and co-workers. And may we remind ourselves now to go forth as beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.